that's what spring ball's for, is to figure that stuff out, figure out your combinations, so that once we do get into the summer, those guys can really start working together and getting used to each other. You like to have them in a unit, so as they go through summer workouts, they're really working together as a starting five or a second five, or there might be 6 or 7 guys that you're working into your top 5 guys, but they've got to get used to working together as well. And then obviously once we get through training camp and before we open up against Clemson, we'll have that all sorted out. But I really like the versatility of the guys has allowed us to do that, and it's been a real positive.
How have you seen Coach Malzahn grow in this profession over the years since you first started working with him?
He sees the big picture as good as it's almost uncanny, really. There'll be times where I feel like my office is bugged because I'll be talking about something, and next thing I know, he'll come in and he'll say, "Hey, I was thinking about this," and it's the same thing that Rhett and I were just talking about earlier. So I think I got to get my office trays for bugs in there or something. But no, but he sees the big picture, and I've always said that Gus is a special person in that he has his greatest ability is that he brings out the best in people. He really does. He brings out the best in people, and certainly he and I together, he's brought out the best in me as a coach and as a person, and that's what he has an uncanny ability to do. And so, but I would say over the course of the last several years is just seeing the big picture. When we first started working together, he'd been a head coach primarily his whole career, and then he got to just become an offensive coach and focusing on the offense, being an offensive coordinator. And so now to kind of circle back around after he's been a head coach for a few years, again, he sees the big picture, and that's what makes him. That's what makes him who he is. That and the fact that he really does bring out the best in people.
Does he still not understand any of your jokes?
No, he gets my jokes. Let me tell you this about the joke. All right, I like to have fun. I like life. You know what I mean? If you can't have fun and do your job as well, then really you probably ought to think about changing your profession, because life's too short to not enjoy yourself, And Gus enjoys himself. He has fun. He has a funny way of showing it at times, but no, he's. I'll tell you, this has been it's been a refreshing deal for me personally and professionally, coming here and getting back with Gus. Again, he's one of my very good friends, but also the opportunity to work for him and with him has been awesome. I'm excited about it.
Speaking of fun, we know you used to call him Jimmy Neutron. Do you still call him that? What are the new nicknames?
Well, there was the Boy Genius, and there was Inspector Gadget, and then at the end of our time at Tulsa, I just started calling him G Unit, but no, he's Coach Malzahn now, man. He's the head guy, so we gotta keep that level of what's the word I'm looking for?
Professionalism.
Professionalism.
But was it like old times when you guys hooked back up? Like, did you guys? In those 7-8 years, how much have you guys both changed? How much have you guys remained the same when you get in the room together?
Well, no, I think we're cut from the same cloth in terms of from a philosophy standpoint. When I cut my teeth in was with Rich Rodriguez and the tempo stuff, and of course Gus, was coming from more of a gap-based, but still the tempo was the big thing, and we were kind of zone-based at West Virginia. And then when we got together, we married that up, and it took a little time for us to figure each other out, We're kind of like the odd couple in a way, he's a lot like Felix. I'm a lot like Oscar, I guess. And some of the young people in the crowd may not even get that reference, but once we've remained close from our time at Tulsa together, and so to get back together now several years later, and to get back into that. I call it. I like being in my wheelhouse of tempo, spread. It's exciting for me.
So how much do you strategize with them, and how much do you expect to strategize with them, and mesh those ideas again, and even come up with new things going into the season?
Well, we have always kind of shared ideas, even when when he had left and came here. I stayed at Tulsa, then I was at Vanderbilt. We talked a lot, through that process. Of course, being in the same league, that was an interesting thing because I'd be able to watch film of Auburn against league opponents and stuff, and kind of get an idea of how Gus was attacking them. I'm sure he would look at some things that we were doing at Vanderbilt at the time because there was a lot of similarities in presentation, not necessarily process, and that we weren't a no-huddle team at Vanderbilt, but the presentation of a lot of their run game stuff was very similar. So we've always kind of shared ideas and strategized or whatever, but once we get into the season, we have a lot of great coaches on our offensive staff. Rhett Lashley is as good as it gets. I've known Rhett for 10 years. He's as good as they come. Having worked with Cody now for a few weeks, and I've known Cody for a while, just through our relationship with Gus and with Rhett and everything. But having worked with him for a few weeks, man, I really like what he brings to the table on a daily basis. And Scott Fountain is just an incredible professional coach. Just his professionalism, the way he approaches his job. Is outstanding, and then Tim Horton. I think I surprised Tim when we first got back here together, and I said, I know the first day that you and I met was like 2003 at New Smyrna Beach High School, and I always remember Tim Horton because of how nice of a person he was to me the first time I met him, and so we have to be able to get with all of our guys. Gus and I have a great relationship, and that's awesome. But our staff is outstanding. We have an outstanding offensive staff, and so once we get into the foxhole and we start game planning and working together, I'm sure we'll all bring our best, and then we'll also be able to take marching orders and move forward together, and that's going to be a big part of our success here.
Coach, I'm sure you've already addressed this, but just you're talking about the tackles,
yes,
and Austin. Kind of how's that setting up right now?
It's coming along well. Austin's done a nice job, particularly in the last week or so. Been repping at left tackle.
Left tackle, right?
And Robert Left's been over on the right side, and Robert Left has also repped at left tackle as well this spring. So, we want to have a contingency plan. My coach always used to tell me, if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. We have no plans for failure here. So we have to have a contingency plan as well. And what that means is I can't just go out there and say, well, this guy's our left tackle, this guy's our right tackle. We got to have a plan that if something were to happen, we got to shift some bodies around. And what's allowed us to do that is the versatility of guys like Austin Golson and Braden Smith, who's repped at right tackle this spring as well. Robert Leff has repped at both tackles. Darius James has repped at both tackles. Xavier Dampier has repped at center and guard. So those guys that are kind of older, the veteran guys, having versatility has really allowed us to mix and match a little bit.
And in the end, you just trying to get the 5 best ones?
Absolutely, that's the goal. The 5 best guys that also work together in combination, So
how close is a guy like Mike Horton to being one of the 5 or 6 best guys?
Mike's doing a great job. He really is. For a guy who's a freshman, I know that he probably, from what I understand, last year, got a lot of reps working with the 2 group, and you can tell, that he's got. But Mike's a guy that we're expecting really big things from as we move forward.
He's at right guard.